Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar with Adaptiiv's product feature series. Today, we're going to take you through one of the modules in our software. And really, the webinar today is aimed at improving radiotherapy treatment using 3D printed bolus. So we're going to take you through the uniform thickness bolus module, which is mainly used for photon treatment in our module, and yeah, we're excited to really feature this content today and provide it to you. So I'm Rohit Seth. I am the Director of Marketing here at Adaptiiv, and I'm joined by my colleague Borko Basaric, who is a medical physics specialist here with our company. And Borko will introduce himself later in a few minutes here. I will take you through a little bit of background on Adaptiiv. Those of you that have maybe attended some of our webinars in the past would have seen some of this content, but I'm just going to give a brief overview on what we do here at Adaptiiv and all the great things that we feature. So as I mentioned, we're a 3D printing software solution. We're used in photon electron radiotherapy as well as high dose rate surface brachytherapy. The beauty of our software is that you can design and create patient-specific medical accessories that are based on individual CT scan data from each patient. So accessories created in our software conform to patient anatomy and provide superior fit, as well as dose distribution is improved. As you can see here, we're the only end-to-end regulated solution of its kind. So we have FDA 510K approval in the US. We were in July of 2018. We're the first company in the world to actually achieve that designation to target a 3D printing software for use in radiation oncology. We're very proud of that. We also have CE mark in Europe, TA approvals in Australia. We're living in the WAN database in New Zealand, and as well as we have ISO certification. So we're definitely a fully validated and verified solution. And as you can see here, we've spent many person hours on validating a specific 3D printer, which you can see in the image here to the right, and filament materials as well. So we validated thermoplastic polyurethane as well as PLA, polylactic acid. So TPU and PLA, TPU is a more flexible material and PLA is a more rigid material that can be used in 3D printing with our solution. Current update on our customer base, our global footprint now spans 11 countries. We've increased that by over 50% this year, so we've added 4 new countries year to date in 2019. Again, very proud of that. And yeah, some good coverage, and those blue are going to expand a lot more as we move forward to the end of this year and into next. So a few points about our software and some of the advantages of using our solution. So as you see, seamless integration is something that we had from the very outset of creating and developing our software, was the ability to seamlessly and fully integrate with a clinically commissioned TPS. So our software, you're able to create and design accessories based on the plan in the TPS, and then export those structures back for dose and plan verification in your clinically commissioned TPS. So we really optimized the workflow that way and made it work with existing radiotherapy workflows. We reduced risk by using our solution. So again, I talked about validation and verification. We also actually allow users to create a patient-specific design and then to deliver the treatment as per the prescribed plan that's validated in your TPS. So our software is the only solution that's validated to ensure that the design that you create is what's printed for treatment. So again, very proud about that. The ability to verify and validate dose is very important. Using third-party software or other types of ways to validate is very hard, and you definitely don't have backing and credibility in terms of a regulated solution doing that. As you can see here, you optimize the fabrication process by having an in-house solution, so software and the 3D printer to actually create these devices all in-house. So there's no delays in shipping or incurring additional costs with shipping. So you save time and money in terms of fabrication. And you also eliminate the need for complex materials such as wax, bolus, is very difficult to produce and adhere to complex patient anatomies, which leads nicely into improving accuracy and precision of treatment. So I mentioned the conformal fit, which reduces air gaps compared to traditional sheet bolus, and Borko will actually take you through a live demo of our software a little later after this presentation to show you how we can reduce those air gaps and how accuracy and precision of treatment can be greatly improved. And in the end, the patient is of utmost importance to all of us, and we at Adaptiiv believe in providing the highest standard of patient care. So we know from using our software, it's patient specific first and foremost. So what the patient receives is definitely something designed specifically for them. And traditional sheet bolus does not do that. Something like Superflab requires a lot of tape. And traditional methods like that may also require things like warm wax or using wet gauze to stuff cavities where there are air gaps. And then again, you can't verify and validate that those air gaps have been reduced where dose is being delivered as prescribed. So without further ado, actually, before I get to our presenter Borko today, there are a few testimonials that I'd love to share. It's always great to hear from our customers and people that are using our 3D printing software solution. So here are a few comments. So the first one's from Indiana University Health. They're actually a customer and collaborator of ours. So Brian Obershiner there is a tremendous talent, and he has a lot of experience with respect to 3D printing. So he's definitely a trusted advisor and resource to us, as well as one of our collaboration partners. So he mentioned that, using our solution, they were able to print an entire bolus overnight, ensuring it was ready for the next day's treatment. So they were running into a little bit of a time crunch, and their patient was already undergoing treatment. So they needed a bolus the next day for the next course of treatment, and they were able to do that with our solution. So, that's great. The next quote here is from St. Luke's Radiation Oncology Network out of Dublin. So Kieran Malone is a medical physicist there and has been using our software solution for a few years now. And they've seen great benefit in reduced setup times, as I mentioned, improved patient comfort and reproducibility as well. So, that point I should elaborate a little bit on. So by using our solution, you can have the confidence that what is planned in the clinically commissioned TPS will actually result in a printed accessory that follows strict QA requirements, that is yield of radiation therapy. So very important there, and a very powerful tool, as Karen mentions. Another two here, Nova Scotia Health Authority is actually one of our main research partners. So they've used our solution and definitely said that they're very pleased and satisfied with the way it worked, and a plan like the one they developed without using our solution wouldn't be possible any other way. So really cool to see that. And last but not least, Clatterbridge Cancer Centre out of the UK has been using our solution for brachytherapy for the last couple of years as well. And they were experiencing a lot of limitations in terms of fabricating brachytherapy applicators and doing it in a time effective way. So our solution actually addressed the problems they were incurring or experiencing, and actually increased their capacity to use more brachytherapy treatment. So at the time when they started using it, it was the only commercially available solution for them. So that's great. Great to hear. We love hearing that. So without further ado, now is the time for the main event. And our presenter today, as I mentioned, is Borko Basaric, and I will hand the mic over to him to allow him to introduce himself properly. Thanks.
Thanks, Roy. Hello, everybody. My name is Borko Basaric, and I'm a medical physics specialist here at Adaptiiv and the product owner of the 3D Bolus software. My experience stems from 10 years of medical physicist working in a radiation therapy clinic, both in Serbia and Canada. And I've been working for Adaptiiv for 2 years now. So today I'll be talking about the Adaptiiv 3D Bolus 3D printing software solution. First, I will touch the status quo in radiation therapy concerning Bolus. And the status quo is that we all kind of use conventional bolus sheets in our clinics, and basically the bolus is a flat piece of water-flow material placed on the top of the patient's skin. We all know that, and we know that it is used to increase the radiation dose delivered to the skin. But also from the experience, we know that a sheet, of the bolus sheet, cannot really accommodate complex anatomical geometries of the patient and may leave some air gaps. And we also know that air gaps may lead to underdosage, which is reported in various papers to be around 1 to 10%, which can be a lot in terms of radiation therapy accuracies that we want to achieve. So basically, I will talk about our goal that we set before we actually designed our 3D Bolus software, and that goal is that we wanted to actually produce a patient-specific accessory. So we wanted to produce something that will fit the specific patient, and we wanted to produce an accessory that will be 3D printed and that will maximize the fit to the patient, and at the same time, by maximizing the fit, it will minimize the underdosage to the surface of the patient. Secondly, we want to accomplish the spatial fidelity of the 3D printed device, meaning that what we design in our 3D printing software, we want to be able to manufacture and to produce physically and to vouch for the spatial fidelity of that object. Also, we want to characterize the symmetric properties of materials so that medical physicists can use that data in planning the radiation therapy for their patients. And of course, we want to address the commissioning and QA of the software, of the hardware, and of the 3D printing accessory itself, in order to overcome and to bridge these two worlds, 3D printing technology, which is fairly new in the realm of the radiation therapy, and the, I would say, standard radiation therapy field as we know it. So we want to produce this seamless integration of this piece of technology, of 3D printing technology, and ultimately our software, and embed it into your clinical workflow. So out of all these goals, let's begin with patient-specific accessories. So we use DICOM information, we use DICOM CT images and DICOM RT structures to retrieve the size and shape of the bolus. And here we are talking about uniform thickness bolus, simple bolus. And we use DICOM information to actually make a 3D render of that object and convert it into an STL file, which is compatible with 3D printers. Basically, by doing that, as I said, we want to improve accuracy in fitting and surface dose uniformity. There have been some publications recently, and the one I will be talking about is from Dr. Robar from Nova Scotia Cancer Center in Halifax, Canada. Where volume of cavities are inspected in several different patients, and it was found that the air cavities beneath the 3D printed uniform thickness bolus are reduced up to 16 times regarding the volume, and can be reduced up to 12 times regarding the linear dimension normal to the surface, which seems a lot. And basically, there was the overall improved surface dose was reported in this paper. And this is, you will find in our reference publications as the reference number 1. And we recommend reading this publication. Of course, when we are addressing spatial fidelity, as I mentioned before, we want to ensure that what you design in our 3D Bolus software, you will ultimately print something with a sufficient accuracy in its spatial fidelity. When we talk about spatial fidelity, we basically talk about linear dimensions, X, Y, Z, and a curve test. So Adaptiiv has come up with the benchmark that we offer to our customers that is to be printed, and then you can use calipers or a ruler or any kind of measuring equipment to actually measure linear dimensions of this benchmark and to measure the curve test, the extent of curvature of this phantom, and to ensure the sufficient accuracy of your 3D printer. The main theme that is concerned to most of the medical physicists is the characterization of the symmetric properties of the materials. So basically that's the CT-HU homogeneity. We have done some extensive research in the last couple of years, and basically we have many white papers that tell us about the variation of HUs in our samples, and what that variation of HUs is actually what is it doing with the dose? Like, what is the dose outcome in the phantom or in the patient concerning the change of HUs? So we found that by varying the Hounsfield units for plus or minus 100 from the mean, it is reported in this white paper that the variation is no more than 1% in the worst case scenario. Of course, there are many more publications about the characterization of the symmetric properties, and I mentioned in our reference publications at the end of this presentation, you will have some very interesting papers to read, and one of them concerning the characterization of the symmetric properties of materials for 3D printing in radiation therapy is a paper by Kraft, so we definitely recommend reading this one. Also, assessing the mass density of prints and basically the mass of the prints, you can basically establish the QA process, a very easy QA process of assessing your accessories, 3D printed accessories. Also, we want to touch the commissioning and QA processes, and we are aware that at this moment there are no official standards in North America or Europe or worldwide of the commissioning and QA processes that would be, let's say, recommended. So in our extensive research, we have found, or we have set some tolerance and action levels, and we have basically devised some QA procedures that are very familiar with the radiation therapy world and that bridge the world between medical physics and radiation therapy. So we wanted to basically talk about the software commissioning and QA, the 3D printer commissioning and QA, which basically goes down to a mechanical QA. And we wanted to make some recommendations about commissioning QA of the 3D printed device, and especially concerning spatial fidelity and the symmetric properties. We have also done a fair amount of research on validation of different materials, whether they are rigid materials like polylactic acid, PLA, or flexible like TPU. And we have a lot of research done there, and white papers and recommendations on how to deal with these kind of materials. Also, to anyone who is concerned about official commissioning and QA protocols and recommendations, TG, so Task Group 336 of the AAPM is basically responsible for coming up with the task group protocol that will hopefully be out in 2 or 3 years' time. So anyone who is concerned about this protocol may reach out to TG336 group and associate themselves with the group. Going to our software and especially the user interface, I have to say that at first look, many of you will find that the software looks like a TPS, and indeed it looks like a TPS, but it is not a TPS as it does not perform any kind of dose calculation. So any dose calculation with any kind of accessories coming out from the 3D Bolus software as RT structures and going back to your TPS can be validated in your clinically commissioned TPS, and any dose calculations have to be performed in your clinically commissioned TPS.
So Borko, a question for you on that. So a lot of our users and some prospects of ours have asked how long that process takes. So is it a complex process to export the structure back to the clinically commissioned TPS for dose verification?
Okay, Rohit, thanks for the question. Actually, it is a really good question. So basically, our software works in that way that you have, in order to perform any kind of work in our software, you would have to export the patient CT images and RT structures from the TPS. So as you mentioned, like it is an easy export of files, right? And you have to import those files into our software upon finishing the work in our software, which you will see takes few minutes. We can easily export the RT structure, the modified RT structure, or the designed RT structure back to the TPS very easily and include it in the calculation of the dose in the TPS. So it's a very easy process.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think that's what people want to hear. So that's great. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks.
And now we will go to a software demo, and I will talk about a simple bolus module that we have. As you see, this is a landing page of our software, and at the moment we have 3 modules: simple bolus, modulated electron bolus, and surface brachytherapy applicator. So we have already done webinars on modulated electron bolus and surface brachytherapy applicators. So anyone who is interested in those 2 modules can reach out to us and ask for these webinars. But now I will talk about simple bolus. So as I said, in order to perform any kind of work in our software, we would have to basically import DICOM files, and in this particular case, we are importing DICOM CT images and DICOM RT structures. As we see here, we have 2D views, axial, sagittal, coronal, and the 3D view of the object to be dealt with. So basically, as I said, the simple bolus module, as its name says, it's really easy to use. We just have to basically select the structure we want to get a 3D render of. In this case, of course, we would want to get a bolus structure. So the warning we just got is telling us to acknowledge the electron density, relative electron density, which is set in this software to be 1.15. So this is a relative electron density for the material PLA, which we found was 1.15. But in our software, you can change this and you can fine-tune it to whichever value you find and commission within your hospital and concerning any kind of 3D printing material. So this value you can actually fine-tune in our software. So this is a 3D render of the bolus. And as I said, it's pretty easy to use. Just select from a drop-down menu a structure you want to see a 3D render of. But more important, I will show you now some of the post-processing features that we found really handy and important, and cut short the time needed to actually design the bolus itself. So I will first go to dosimetry, which basically is in vivo dosimetry. So any kind of reference points that are made in the TPS will be populated in this marker selection window here. And for that purpose, we made, in our TPS, we made in vivo reference point, this yellow dot here, and the coordinates of this point are transferred in DICOM to our software. So what is the goal here? So the goal here is first to know where is our in vivo reference point, and the second goal is on that place we want to make in vivo pocket for our dosimeter. So we will just create one. As a default, this pocket will be created for OSLD dosimeter, in vivo dosimeter, which is 10 by 10 by 1 millimeter in shape and size. It's a cube pocket, as you will see. But the beauty of this post-processing feature is that you can commission your own pocket. So you can change shape and size, either cube or circular shape, and you can change the size of this pocket depending on your own dosimeter, and you can customize that here. So you can make your own, and you can populate your own list of dosimeters. We have some testimonials from our colleagues from the US that this kind of dosimetry pocket would be a little bit harder to make in some of the third-party open source softwares, especially when we want to make a cube or circular pocket on a curved surface of the bolus, which is not really that straightforward. But then again, our algorithm, as you saw, takes just maybe a couple of seconds to accomplish that, and our customizable user interface will help you accomplish what you need. One other post-processing feature that is really interesting is cleaving. So cleaving is used when the build volume of your 3D printer cannot accommodate the size of the bolus you want to print. So let's say you want to print a very large chest bolus, but your print build volume is not sufficient enough to accommodate that large chest ball. So you can actually take this cleaving plane and basically cut the bolus into pieces, and of course you can change this cutting, or let's say cleaning plane, as you wish, and basically make two halves of the same bolus, and maybe print it at the same time or separately, however it fits your needs. So basically it's a pretty handy feature to have. Some of other post-processing features are a little bit less complicated in that sense, but they are really useful. So one of these features is a labeling tool, a label that we can put on any surface of the bolus, or any surface of the 3D rendered object, and it will at the end it will finally print the name and the ID of your patient, so you can match your patient more easily. Another post-processing feature that is really well, I would say quintessential, is that we have a cropping tool. So cropping tool is very important when we want to print anything, because by cropping the bolus just for a millimeter or two, we are ensuring that the side of the bolus that will be facing the printer bed is completely flat. That means we will maximize the success of the 3D print, because if this side of the bolus is not completely flat, and this side will ultimately face the printer bed, if this is not completely flat, there is 100% chance that the print will fail. So this cropping tool is quintessential tool in actually preparing your accessory and design to be printed. About exporting, when we want to export files, we can ultimately export the RT struct. So whatever post-processing or whatever modulation we might do on our design of the bolus, we can export the corresponding RT struct very easily back to the TPS and account in the dose calculation and verify our design. But at the same time, we can export the SL file, which is compatible with 3D printing technology and 3D printers in general. Of course, if we have a cleaving, if we use the cleaving option, then STL will be given in 2 files, like let's say just left and right piece. But if you have also in vivo dosimetry tool used here, you will be exporting not just left and right piece of the bolus, but you will be also exporting the plug, for a little plug for this pocket, because when the dosimeter is not in use, of course you should plug this hole and ensure the reproducibility and accuracy of your bolus and in general your 3D printing devices. Let's just go back to for some conclusions. Yes, so here are some of the screenshots, and this is on the left-hand side. You can see a simple bolus printed in PLA, and here you can see also a simple bolus, but with an in vivo pocket. And here down on this page, you can see arm bolus that is actually cleaved in half. And as I said, if the build volume of the printer is not large enough to accommodate a big print, you can easily cleave the bolus and print it into halves. And later you can attach it, you can glue it together, you can glue it with a fast curing silicone, or you can tape it, or whatever these you seem to be fit for that one. And again, by actually this arm bolus is a good example of more exotic type of bolus that you can only actually 3D print, and that makes sense only when it's patient specific, but because I don't see a Superflab actually covering all these geometrical complexities for that matter. And just this brings us to a conclusion, and I will try to make a case here for our 3D bolus software and why we think it's a good solution to have in your radiation therapy facility. So first of all, we offer one software that is regulated, as Rohit mentioned, in North America, Europe, Asia, Australia. So we are regulated, and we offer one software that deals and performs the designing that is equivalent of using several third-party or open source softwares that require sufficient skill and maybe more people, more staff, medical physicists, RTs, ROs. So basically, we vouch it is more efficient than having multiple third-party softwares. I want to,
and you can export the RT structure from the third-party software in most cases back to the TPS. So that's another argument.
Yeah, that's a good point. And to add on all of this, we have a medical physics dedicated team, which basically ensures that whatever we do in a software, whatever feature we add on, is kind of compatible of what you're doing on the MedPhys side of things, on that side. So I want to mention the ease of use of this software. It requires, of course, a short training. We provide that training. We provide a user manual. We provide tips and tricks for using our software. And of course, our software offers design of the patient-specific device, and I have mentioned why we want to go to patient-specific devices, especially for bolus treatments. Of course, as I mentioned in the demo, we offer the post-processing features that are really relevant to 3D printing in radiation therapy. I just emphasize this in radiation therapy because all these features like in vivo and cleaving and patient label and cropping are really relevant for us maximizing the success of the print and minimizing the staff involved in it, time, cost, and everything else associated with it. We want to ensure the seamless integration of this 3D printing technology. And as I mentioned, we have an extensive medical physics team and development team that work tirelessly on basically this seamless integration and bridging the world of 3D printing technology and the radiation therapy field. And above all, we offer the in-house fabrication, meaning that whatever it is designed and manufactured or printed, it is done in your own hospitals. So you don't have shipping costs, you don't have any delays in treatment, and above all, and I think this is really important for medical physicists, you can control your own QA processes, and you can actually determine your own and commission your own 3D printed accessory and device. And I think it's very important for medical physicists in radiation therapy. And of course, it is reported the reduced cost of design and fabrication, especially in respect to CNC milling, and of course, all the advantages beforehand that I mentioned. So, and that's why we actually think this software solution is good for radiation therapy use, for boluses, electron treatments. We're going into brachy, so a lot more webinars coming along. And for the very end of this presentation, we can offer some references. There are no many at this stage, but we didn't want to flood you with all this. We just wanted to present the most relevant, which will help, especially those who are starting with 3D printing. And I know a lot of you out there are just starting 3D printing, and these are kind of quintessential papers that we or presentations and publications that we recommend reading. And I hope we can go to questions now.
Yes, that was great, Borko. Thanks.
Thanks.
So yeah, we're going to open up the floor for questions now. We have about 15 or 20 minutes. So please type the questions in the chat bar, and we'll get to them. All right, so we have.
Will now be recorded.
Sorry about that. We have a few questions in here from let's start with, sorry. Yes, what is the best bolus material? So Haluk, thanks for your question, asked what the best bolus material is.
Hello to everybody again. It is a good question. What is the best bolus material? But I would rather say, like, what is the bolus material you would want to use? So there are many materials that can be used, but from our standpoint, the best might be PLA. Why PLA? Because it's very easily printed, it's printed fast, and it retains its spatial fidelity very nicely and very accurately. On the other hand, PLA is a rigid plastic material. So if you would want to go into more flexible materials, then we can also offer TPU materials, specifically Cheetaflex. This material is a little bit more flexible, and as it gets thinner, it becomes more flexible. On the other hand, the spatial fidelity of more flexible prints has less accuracy than PLA. So it's kind of there exists a trade-off actually between the rigidity or the flexibility of the material and its spatial fidelity when printed. So this is kind of a trade-off that I would say that medical physicists have to decide in their own hospitals what works best for their patient cases. So we would maybe vote for PLA, but ultimately it's a MedPhys decision and maybe radiation oncology's decision to make what works best in your own hospital.
We validated both PLA and TPU, and we have certain characteristics and technical specifications to print with those. So, you know, it's really, like Borko says, a matter of the MedPhys at the hospital level. You know, obviously, in some cases, TPU might be more comfortable for the patient because it's more flexible, softer material. But, you know, in other cases, PLA works just fine.
So let's go to the next question. The next question was to explain the QA procedure and the commissioning procedure. So I think I touched on that briefly in the presentation, but I will just mention it again. As for the commissioning, I would say that printing a benchmark resolves a lot of issues. By printing a benchmark, you know that your printer will be printing something that is designed, and that you can actually check and measure with calipers and check the curve test. So we specifically designed this benchmark for users to check the accuracy of the final device when 3D printed. So that's something that at least we recommend that medical physicists do at their own hospitals. But on the other hand, there is this part of the commissioning that's connected to the characterization of the symmetric properties of materials. And there, HU homogeneity test is very important because when you actually print something, you would want to ensure that your final printed device does not have any air gaps inside, and that the print is printed with the 100% infill. You can basically inspect that by CT scanning the device, and of course CT scanning many devices, not just one, but you know, make multiple measurements of it and basically assess what is the homogeneity. In our white paper, we found that overriding the HUs by 100 HUs plus or minus, then the median value of the commissioned device will not change the dose in the buildup for more than 1% across various radiation therapy modalities and energies used in conventional treatments. So that's another thing to note when actually characterizing the density. And as I mentioned, there is this paper in our references. It's paper from Kraft, from MD Anderson, Texas. And it is a very, very good paper, which we recommend for you to read, which touches the characterization of the symmetric properties of materials and why choosing a proper material matters in radiation therapy and when trying to calculate the dose, right, in the TPS. So also by assessing the mass density of the material, or actually assessing the mass, by knowing the mass density, by knowing the volume, we can assess the theoretical mass of your print, and you can actually physically measure the mass of the print and basically set your tolerance level on the mass. So that's another, I would say, QA procedure that you can do. And yeah, so I would say these two, like determining the spatial fidelity and determining the symmetric properties, would be some of the basic commissioning tools that you would need to employ. And measuring, just after commissioning, measuring the mass of prints should be sufficient enough, and maybe inspecting HU homogeneity on CBCT scans or something similar can aid a lot in QA processes.
Great. So the next question here, thanks Borko, is from Mary, and she has a question about purchasing the software. So do sites purchase the software, or are they billed for bolus fabrication on a case-by-case basis? So thanks Chris for stepping in there and kind of answering that for Mary. Chris works for the University of Chicago. He's one of our first customers that were using our software. Thanks for that, Chris. So yeah, he's right. You do purchase the software from us, and you can purchase the 3D printer, although if you have your own printer or you have another 3D printer that you are using now, that's okay. The benefit of purchasing our printer is that we validated and spent the 3,000 plus hours, and it's a turnkey solution that you're getting with the software and that validated printer, along with the materials we validated for use. But you're more than open to, there's a lot of printers on the market, 3D printers, so you're more than welcome to use your own. But yeah, you purchase the software from us. You can purchase it up front at a one-time cost, or on a month-by-month basis. So we have different pricing plans that if you'd like to learn more, please reach out to us, either at marketing@adaptiiv.com or sales@adaptiiv.com. Any one of those emails will work, and we can give you more details. But yeah, and then we also sell print bundles as well. So after the software, you do get a certain amount based on whatever plan you select, and it includes support for the printer and software, and then you can purchase print bundles if you are printing more bolus or HDR surface brachytherapy applicators than what you get with the initial bundle. So the next question is from Richard at Cablon Medical. Hi, Richard. Does it often happen that you must go back to Adaptiiv to adjust your 3D bolus? So I think Borko will be able to answer this.
Hi, Richard. Thanks for the question. Actually, it's a really good question. So I wouldn't say that you would have to go back and adjust the 3D bolus if you adjust it the first time, right? So the important thing is that when trying to print the bolus ultimately, or let's just go back to the TPS when you generate the bolus in the TPS, and it is very important to actually take into account any wires, markers, BBs on the skin and remove those from contours, because if you don't remove them, these impressions will stay in the bolus and the bolus will be printed that way, so it accounts for BBs, wires, or whatnot, right? So it is very important that the kind of initial generation of the bolus that is going to be transferred in the 3D bolus and later printed has no any marks of wires, markers, BBs, or any kind of auxiliary devices on the patient when bolus is generated in the TPS. So when that is done, when you ensure that bolus follows the patient contour according to your specifications, only then it is, I would say, safe to go to the next stage to export DICOM CT images and artistructs to our software to do the post-processing and ultimately to print. Again, to answer the question, if all these procedures are done accordingly, I would say that there would be no need to go back to bolus software and adjust the 3D bolus. Of course, with post-processing features, if they are used properly, meaning that if a bolus, the 3D render is cropped so that the bottom part of the print or the bottom part of the bolus facing the printer bed is completely flat, this will ensure and maximize the success of the print. So again, there's no need to go back. So there are some instructions which need to be followed to ensure and maximize the success.
So next question is about Ahmad. Ahmad mentions the cutting feature, and he means cleaving, I believe. Is there a way to link the two pieces together for accurate clinical use and positioning?
Mm-hmm. Hello, Ahmad. Thanks for the question. It is a really good question. And actually, when designing the cleaving feature, we actually researched a lot how to actually piece these pieces together. So as I mentioned, I think I mentioned in the presentation, you can actually use a fast curing silicone to attach them, or you can glue them together, I would say with the glue, or you can tape them with a tape, or do any kind of other further immobilization, I would say, or attaching of the cleaving parts. I can say what we actually tried is we tried to put pins and holes on two sides, but we ultimately abandoned this approach, because if you use pins and holes, your bolus will not be attached perfectly when 3D printed, because 3D printing, although it's accurate to a sub-millimeter level, there is this still like sub-millimeter, I would say, uncertainty. And this uncertainty you can see when you try to attach with pins and holes two pieces together, that you can still see through these pieces, which is, I would say, not a good radiation property of the feature. So I think it is better that these two halves of the bolus are printed, and then these halves, which are these surfaces which are printed, which are completely flat, coming off the printer bed, should be glued together as they are perfectly flat. And you should use these flat surfaces to piece or to glue the pieces together. And as I said, we tried pins and holes. We will try lap joint, which will basically be maybe the next step we're going through. But for now, the pieces which will have to be joined are flat. For now. So I hope I answered your question with this one.
Yeah, and Chris mentioned from the University of Chicago that hot glue worked the best for them in connecting two pieces together. Mm-hmm. So thanks again, Chris, for that feedback. Really appreciate that. Always great to see firsthand use of our software and how it's being used. That's great. So, oh, sorry, it's Eugenia, not Chris. I apologize. Hi, Eugenia. So it looks like we're to our last question here, again from Haluk. He's asking, will you need extra mobilization for breast bolus?
Mm-hmm. Hello, Haluk. Again, all good questions here. So breast immobilization. So first of all, the answer is yes and no, but I would say maybe rather yes. So I think you would need an extra immobilization, but just to actually keep that bolus on the patient by maybe just additionally taping the bolus to the patient, not too much, because the bolus is already patient specific, which means it will fit the patient very well. For the breast, there is gravity, right? So I would say that if just placing the bolus on the patient does not work, because the bolus may be like on side of the patient, the gravity may be involved there. So maybe just an additional light taping, but that would be more of a question for RTT. How would they handle that? I would go for a tape, but I would leave this open for your RT in your clinic to answer this question. They would know the best how to immobilize it further, but not disturb the overall fit.
Perfect. All right, well, that looks like it's the end of the questions that have been submitted. Now, if anyone has any additional questions, oh, sorry, there's one going back again. Haluk asked about RED, and
Yes.
he just asked a little bit of elaboration on RED.
Yeah, so I will, try to elaborate on RED. So as I said, RED of a certain material that you're using for 3D printing has to be determined, I would say, in-house in your own hospital. So you would have to, so there are multiple ways how to do it, but essentially you can scan your 3D printed samples. You can assess the mean value of HUs that is associated to your 3D printed samples. So why I emphasize 3D printed? Because essentially density and relative electron density, but the mass density as well, I mean, those are all connected terms. It's different when the device is printed in respect to the raw material. So that's why I'm emphasizing you have to assess RED of a 3D printed material, because it's a little bit less than the raw material. But again, as I said, you would have to scan, CT scan the device, and of course scan multiple devices and determine the mean value of HUs, and then go into TPS and then translate your HUs into RED. Or if you have Pinnacle, for example, you have to translate your mass density into RED, or no, for Pinnacle it's just using mass density, sorry. So also you can translate the mass density into RED depending on what TPS you use and what information you have in your HU or your CT to RED curve, because different TPSs use different approaches, slightly different approaches, but it's not a straightforward. So the question, the answer is not straightforward, and that's why we reference the Kraft paper, because Kraft actually made a thorough research of the characterization of materials in terms of relative electron densities and mass densities and how to assess them, and that sometimes your CT to RED curve will not show you a good it will show you an approximation, but not a very good approximation of your HUs and REDs, and therefore you might want to go towards assessing the mass density and transferring mass density into RED. So that paper by Kraft is really good, and we recommend every medical physicist who is interested in 3D printing to read this paper. But then again, just to wrap up, you would need to commission the RED of materials, of 3D printing materials in your own hospital. We can place some recommendations and give some recommendations, but ultimately I would say that medical physicists and hospitals would have to assess RED of their own prints, however they like, right? Sure.
All right, thank you, Borko. That was great. And thank you to all for attending and listening and participating in this webinar. We really appreciate it. Stay tuned for our future webinars, and if you have any other questions, please reach out to us. You can reply to the email that was sent to you, marketing@adaptiiv.com, with any questions or additional questions for Borko or us on our software, our 3D printing software solution. And again, if you'd like some copies of our past webinars, please request those through that same email and we'll send them over to you. Thank you very much and have a great day, everyone.